So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you decide to listen to this particular part two. This is probably the foundation of the whole course. It's called active listening, and there are some techniques that we will go through how you respond to individuals. So, if you missed class or if you want to review, it's probably a good idea to listen to this recording before you answer the worksheet that is due. Um, Here we go. So active listening. What is the particular definition? The definition is the receiver of an individual tries to understand what the sender's message means and what the sender is feeling. Okay? That sounds relatively simple, but sometimes we have lots of noise in our head that we have to get rid of that particular noise. So think about how do you effectively listen to somebody? What gets in your particular way? And then there are techniques that you can use. How do you put the receiver's message into his or her own words? So we'll look at some techniques for that and restating the message so that you can make sure that you have accurately understood the message. We all think we do, until we go to repeat it back, and maybe the person says, "Oh, I didn't mean that," or "I didn't say that." So the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it takes place, right? We all think we're communicating, A plus until somebody does something and you're like, didn't I just say that to him or her? And they did the opposite. So iMessages. iMessages are non-blaming messages. And hopefully you were in class, we practice this. If you can find some way rather than saying, you're such a loser when you leave dirty dishes in the sink. You could say something like, I feel overwhelmed when you keep leaving dishes in the sink because it makes more work for myself. So you always have to say, what are you feeling? And then what is the effect on you? So not using blaming or accusatory words. Now, this might seem kind of stilted, so you might not want to say it exactly like this, but if you're afraid you're going to go wayward and use those terrible blaming statements, you just might want to. I've had many students in the past who have tried this and they said, oh, wow, this worked really well. So it doesn't always work. It's not like a magic potion. You probably have to use it with other techniques too, but try it and see what happens. So empathic communication involves the ability of a person to perceive accurately and sensitively the inner feelings of another and to communicate his or her understanding of these feelings in language attuned to the person's experiences. Okay, again, are you a person who really notices and can remember what somebody says? How do is it really accurate? And the best way is to check back with somebody. How do you intuit the feelings of another? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just need to ask those open-ended questions. And avoid being misled by false facades used to conceal emotions and meanings. So people often, particularly when you first meet them, whether in counseling or case management or another situation, they want to have you think really well of them and form a good impression, which is perfectly normal. So that's why you have to be very skilled at how you're going to get underneath what are their real issues and why did they really come to see you, and to make you comfortable with that, because if you don't, you're not really going to get at the truth of what they're saying to you. So again, continuing on some of the principles of empathic communication. So remaining outside of the person's world, so not as to be overwhelmed. What does that mean exactly? So if somebody's telling you, they're in crisis and they're telling your situation, so you don't feel as if they're throwing, buckets of water over you and you are suffocating, okay? You may feel like that, but how can you respond so that you're not overwhelmed? A couple examples. One, Make sure you know your stuff. So if somebody's telling you about domestic violence, let's say, and you were in a domestic violence situation, that you have dealt with it sufficiently so when they're talking, it doesn't automatically flip you emotionally or cognitively back into your own particular situation. Okay. Having enough skills. Okay. Having self-awareness. So that's really important because remember, the most important tool as a social worker, counselor, somebody who's listening to humans is to be able to use yourself and the gift and skills that you have. And be aware of the diversity of human emotion. Try to use a variety, range of feeling words so that you can help the person identify what are they feeling. And then by helping them identify that, you can, ask particular questions and then get more information. Again, not to be nosy, but just to be able to understand what is the depth of their particular situation. And again, using those I statements, are extremely important. So what are some skills? Attending and acknowledging, providing verbal and nonverbal awareness of the other. We will do a whole chapter on nonverbal communication, but just be aware. What does your face do? What does your eyes do? What is your body language? Is it inviting to somebody else? Are you not going to hopefully go into rolling eyes or sighing if somebody says something you don't agree with? Okay, and there are techniques for providing verbal awareness. Restating, responding, paraphrasing, those are ways of responding to a person's message. Can you put it in different words so that you're checking out what exactly are they saying? Another one, reflecting feelings back, and you may do this through restating or paraphrasing, that has been perceived. So almost you may be interpreting what they're saying, but you always want to check it out. Is your interpretation correct? And then silence. Sometimes you may need to be quiet during a session, and you'll have to say to the person you're working with, your clients, you might have to say, I just need to take a minute, or just need to take a few seconds. Let me just think about what you said, because you may need that for the response. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for the other person. They might need a couple of seconds to think about things too, but it's always important to explain what you're doing to the clients. So another one is summarizing, synthesizing. So this sometimes happens at the end of the session, can happen in the middle. If people are telling you a lot of different information, or maybe a lot of information about the same focus. So you summarize it to them. So it brings together a focus. Now you've told me you're afraid living at home, but you don't have a job, so you're afraid to leave, and then what about the children? And so to kind of restate that and provide a focus for somebody is always helpful. And probing, questioning in a supportive way that requests more information or attempts to clear up confusion. So again, open-ended questions are probably the best. That usually means that it doesn't have a yes or no answer, although sometimes yes or no is appropriate. But whenever possible, use open-ended questions. And again, you need to explain to your client, why are you asking questions? Because again, people think, oh, here goes another person just being nosy and want to get into my business. Okay. So, always make sure you're explaining your particular techniques. And always providing feedback. Again, always checking back to another's ideas, feelings. I always say people about disclosing relevant or personal information. Remember, you are bound by confidentiality. You cannot, walk out of your office and, say what, different people have told you, but yet they can do the same. So you need to be very clear that your information could be shared. This particularly happens in the addictions field, because often clients want to go to a counselor that they know have had the exact same experience that they have. So, I find a lot of times Addictions counselor will share their personal story, but again, always remember they are not bound by confidentiality. In today's world, we never know where that information is going to end up. And, think of ways, how can you show that you're warm and caring to another person, in a professional manner. Remember, when you're working with somebody, they're not your friends, you're not going to socialize with them, but how can you do that in a particular professional relationship? Okay. And I just like this little quote: if you don't go after what you want, you'll never have it. If you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. If you don't step forward, you're always in the same place. So thank you all, particularly through your service learning projects and continuing to connect with each other. You are stepping forward. Okay, so make sure you fill out that sheet where you're answering in one sentence for me and responding to the client. And remember, no shoulds and no advice. Okay, have a great day, and I will see you next week.